Hi everyone, in this video I want to talk about finding a midpoint or an endpoint of a line segment. Notice that in these two problems that we'll work on, when you are asked to find a midpoint, you are given two endpoints, and when you are asked to find an endpoint, you are given the midpoint and the other endpoint. So let's think about our fun question as we go. How many total pets have you owned in your lifetime? And where does this fall in the grand scheme of things on the math section? So this is under coordinate geometry. In the geometry section, notice this is the biggest chunk. Algebra is technically split into 1 and 2. Algebra and geometry comprise the most of the test, but 35 to 45% of the section is geometry, and coordinate geometry is a pretty big chunk of that. So it's doing anything related to geometry, but on the coordinate plane, the X and Y plane. So midpoint, sometimes you're just asked a really simple question like this, and they're testing to see if you know the formula. Or if you're not thinking of it in terms of a formula, you're just reasoning yourself through it, maybe just with common sense. To remember the actual formula, it's M equals midpoint equals, and the final answer is going to be a point. So it's just taking the average. Let's say our 2 points are x1, y1, x2, y2. If our 2 points are x1, y1, x2, y2, then we'll have x1 plus x2 over 2, aka averaging the two x's, and also taking the average of the two y's. That will give us our final answer. So you really don't have to memorize the formula for this, as long as you're thinking about it in terms of just taking the average of the x's and the average of the y's. If you look at a visual, say, of these 2 points, it makes a little bit more sense why taking the average just makes sense. So 1, -2 is one of our points, and then 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's the other one. Okay, so that line segment, looks like this. We have to figure out where approximately is that dot. Well, it kind of looks like it's at 4, 3. Problem is you really need to know the exact point in some situations. So in this case, taking the average, remember, of the x's, that would be like, see this x line right here? Isn't that midpoint of that x line just where that midpoint here falls? And then the average of the y's, there's a y, would just be halfway through that segment connecting the two y's, that is. So all you're doing is thinking, how am I going to set this up where I go 1 plus 5 over 2 is the first part, and -2 plus 8 over 2 is the second. M equals 6 over 2, and then that is 6 over 2 as well. Final answer is 3, 3. Now, some of you could probably do that in your head. If you're under the gun for time for these, you do not need to draw a picture, and some of us don't even need to write out the formula. You're just thinking, what's the halfway point between 1 and 5? What's the halfway point between -2 and 8? Which is a little trickier, but knowing that you can just add them and divide by 2 makes it a lot faster. But the ACT is known to make this a little more complicated when they're saying, okay, we'll tell you this endpoint and we'll tell you a midpoint, but now you have to decide what the final endpoint is. So how do you go backwards? Okay, if we are given an endpoint, I'll draw out the visual just in case this might be what sticks with you. We go 2, and then let's say this is -10, down -10, or down 10. They're saying the midpoint is at 2, 1, 2, -2. Okay, so 2, -10. Well, some people might be able to just start counting units and observing that, hey, if these are both on 2, then maybe we could just start counting units, from one to the next. But let's do it a little bit more scientifically. So if we know that m is equal to, remember, x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2, can't I set this equal to m and call this 2 and -2 is equal to, now we have one point, x1, y1, let's call it. We have one of those, and that is 2, and that is -10. And then we can just call the other parts, the other, x2 and y2, the unknowns. So really I'm solving for, setting this equal to 2, setting this equal to -2. So I can do that as a separate step down here. Just 2 plus x over 2 equals 2, and then -2 equals -10 plus y2 over 2. This will help me solve for my xy pair of the other endpoint. So the way I can solve for that is if I multiply by 2 on both sides, those 2's will cancel. I'll get 2 plus x equals 4, so x is equal to 2. Okay, and right here I can do the same. Times 2 times 2, we get -4 equals -10 plus y. I'm adding 10, I'm adding 10, that's 6 equals the y. So now I know the other endpoint, and hey, that actually makes sense, because if this is 8 units down from one to the next, isn't the other endpoint going to be 8 units up there? 2, 6 does make sense, okay? So let's think about some practice problems for you. Try these, one of each kind again, and I will reveal the answers in about 1 second. Feel free to pause the video. Here they are. So you actually end up getting a mixed number, or you could call that 3 halves for the x in the first one, and then nice happy answer for the second one. Just, it's a little harder when you're asked to find the other endpoint. Okay, so to leave you with a quote, my favorite things to keep me going, let's talk about this one. Do everything with a good heart and expect nothing in return, and you will never be disappointed. I really like this because this is something I'm working on, not having expectations that are too high in life. So I hope this video helped you. I would love if you subscribed and commented on the fun question. If you want to keep up with new videos, that subscription is really helpful, so that you would see the new videos come, pop up on your stream as you log into YouTube. Have a great day. See you soon.